Our next speaker is Margaret Kimberly, editor and senior columnist at Black Agenda Report, where you can read her weekly column, Freedom Rider. Ms. Kimberly was a member of the War Resisters League Speakers Bureau, Stop the Merchants of Death, whose speakers were committed to informing the public about corporate connections to American military activity. She visits with us today from her hometown of New York City. We're happy that she could make it, and her presentation is entitled, Ending the Corporate Military Surveillance State.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in my home state of Ohio. Actually, I was born in Ohio, as I told some of you last night. I was born in Canton, where Debs gave his famous speech 100 years ago. And here we are 100 years later, struggling with the same issues of war and peace and the violence perpetrated by our government. The United States has been involved in many wars, but I think right now this is the longest sustained period of foreign wars in our history. After the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, the United States invaded Afghanistan. There was only one dissenting vote in Congress. And 17 years later, there's still US troops in Afghanistan. That was bogus to begin with. We weren't attacked. The United States wasn't attacked by Afghanistan. We were attacked by individuals, some of whom planned the attack from Afghanistan, but it was a ruse meant to get the United States to have a foothold in Central Asia. And 17 years later, and I'm not sure how many thousands of deaths later, the United States is still there. And this bipartisan, this press for war is completely bipartisan. And that has been made permanent as well. Since 2001, when Bush was president, it was the beginning of his 2 terms. Then we had Barack Obama, a Democrat, and now Trump, a Republican. But when it comes to war and peace, these designations are fairly meaningless. There are some differences, but the military-industrial complex doesn't get smaller, defense budgets don't get smaller, and when it comes to foreign policy especially, there's a lot more continuity than there is any change, and this is particularly telling now in the Trump administration, the man who no one thought would be president, which I think is funny, not ha-ha funny, but ironic, I guess that's the way I should put it. Apparently even he didn't think he was going to be president, but so we could have a entire day-long program talking about his campaign, but for now I'll just make that small mention. But we have been told, ever since Trump came into office, and well, let me back up a little bit. There was a lot of opposition to Trump during his campaign, but not for the reasons, as regards to war and foreign policy, but not for the reasons there should have been. Trump said things that made him suspect. And the neoliberal elites who run our country, some of whom are Democrats and some of whom are Republicans, agree on certain things. For example, his talk of changing the trade bills, NAFTA, there's a new NAFTA bill. I haven't been able to look at it enough. I can't look at it really, and I can't tell you what it says, but the fact that he questioned NAFTA, that he questioned the benefit to American workers, the fact that he stated they were detrimental to American workers, that the TTP trade bill died, that he said the United States should seek to have better relations with Russia. All these things were very dangerous. And that's actually the beginning of Russiagate, because they were spying on him, they were. But in any case, he does become president. And on the one hand, we're told by the resistance, as everybody who doesn't like Trump likes to call themselves, it's a bit of a joke when you consider what a resistance actually does in a country under occupation or a country at war. But we're told he couldn't be trusted and he's crazy and we have to resist him and he's a traitor and he's a psycho and he's a moron. But when he asked for a defense increase, a 10%, now our defense budget is already more than $600 billion before he became president. It's more than half of the federal budget. It's bigger than the defense budgets of the next 10 largest countries combined. And he asked for an amounted to, I think it was $70 billion increase, which he got a $70 billion increase. Actually, he asked for less, and Democrats helped him to get even more than he initially asked for. So the $70 billion, that is the total of Russia's entire defense budget. The increase is the total of Russia's whole budget. And they voted recently on a spending bill. The vote for this gargantuan increase was completely bipartisan. Actually, it was more Democratic than Republican. Only 7 members of the Senate voted no, 6 Republicans, and Bernie Sanders, an independent officially. And this is just one of the reasons I argue for abandoning and working actively to undermine the Democratic Party, the fact that they are on board for war. And I have to say, thank you. I am not one who worries about being called a spoiler. I am not one who worries about this argument of lesser evilism, which is a lie. And especially anyone who's concerned about peace is given nowhere to turn. So there may be issues about abortion or a variety of domestic issues where there's some disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. But when it comes to peace, you've got nowhere to turn. And people are told to hold their nose and vote for Democrats, and you can't be a purist and look at you, it's your fault, Trump won, and it's the Democrats' fault Trump won. But I urge anybody who really is concerned about peace to stop voting for war makers. So shortly after Election Day, at the end of 2016, does everybody remember this whole propaganda or not, this list that came out in the Washington Post? Well, this was very curious. It was shortly after the election, this anonymous group who managed to get to appear in the Washington Post, which I think is significant, produced a list of 200 websites. Black Agenda Report is one of them, I'm very proud of that, that were deemed to be suspect and providing pro-Russian propaganda and anti-US propaganda. I think it's interesting that they were in the Washington Post. I think that tells you it's a Democratic Party project for all their unanimity. And the fact that by that time the Washington Post was purchased by Jeff Bezos, he's the sole owner of the Washington Post. So I don't think that was an accident. But that was the first shot fired in the surveillance state to keep us in line. And that has only gotten worse. Russiagate is the excuse. We've heard about that in the first panel. It's the excuse for clamping down on the left. So first it's Prop or Not, this group, 200 some odd sites, many of whom are great, not just Black Agenda Report, but many others. I urge you to go look at it. They have a website, these Prop or Not people, but at any rate. Immediately we begin to see changes in social media. And I think we forgot, I'm going to admit guilt on my own part. We depend on social media for entertainment, to stay in touch with friends and family, to promote events like this, to express ourselves, to read other people who express ourselves. But they're all, YouTube is run by Google, a large corporation. Facebook wasn't it recently valued at $1 trillion. Twitter, all of them, they are all corporate. We are depending on corporate interests to help us get to help us to communicate. Well, they immediately sprang into action and they changed algorithms. There are websites that saw huge declines in their traffic from Google. I witnessed that personally. I would try to look up columns I'd written for Black Agenda Report, and it used to be very easy. I'd put my name and the subject, and boom, there would be the first thing. Then I wouldn't see it at all. Page 2, page 3, page 4, maybe page 5 if it showed up at all. And this was something happening to a lot of different organizations, and we've heard about what Facebook is doing. Facebook should be regulated, by the way. These should all be regulated as public utilities. But under the guise of defending the country against the Russian menace, we have censorship at a scale not seen since the days of McCarthyism. One Democrat in particular, he's the point guy, Mark Warner of Virginia, went to, yes, go ahead, to Facebook headquarters 3 times. And I guess each time the threats escalated. And now organizations just disappear. There was a website, I know I wrote at least one piece for them, American Herald Tribune. Facebook just took them off. Sometimes ProtestWorks Venezuela Analysis was taken off for a week or so. It came back on. People are, YouTube demonetizes. So anything with certain political content, there are people making a living off of YouTube, having YouTube shows. But YouTube will determine that this isn't good for advertising, so people can't make any money. So we have all these platforms that have turned against us, very obviously. And let's not forget what was going on before. The NSA, and this began under Bush, but it's continued under Obama and continues under Trump. The NSA has essentially all of us under surveillance. They have a record of every email, every website visit, every call you make on your smartphone. And all of this leads to many things. We self-censor, and it leads to the disappearance of certain opinions. You know, most people believe that Russia undermined the 2016 election because that's what they're told over and over and over again. And the people who question, there's a range of skepticism from it's not true at all to portions of it are questionable. Those people are disappeared. For example, there's a group of Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Is it Sanity? Is that the SV? Anyway, these are people, former NSA, former CIA, and they have called into question especially the version of events that Russia hacked the Democratic National Committee. And many of these people, they used to get op-eds in the New York Times or the Washington Post, or scholars like Stephen Cohen. He was, for decades, he was the go-to Kremlin expert guy on the Sunday morning news talk show. Now he's been erased, as have many other people, because the goal is to get the public to be in the mood for war. We, last night when I was speaking, I was talking about, Dan was also talking about these humanitarian wars where we're told that so-and-so, Saddam Hussein is evil, Gaddafi is evil, Assad is evil, and therefore people in those countries need to have bombs dropped on their houses because according to the US government, they're evil. But we also have to be careful. There are parties to this push for imperialism who have credibility they should not have. And I'm referring specifically to Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. You have to be very careful of them. They always back intervention, always. They have signed on to lies. They have helped tell some lies themselves because, and it makes sense, most people don't want a war or an intervention because the US wants to snatch oil or wants to stop Russia and Chinese influence. Nobody's going to respond to that, but that person's evil. This is a genocide. We can stop it if we send drones to bomb people in fill in the blank country. And oh, my time is up almost. So before I end, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do as individuals, what we can do to counter this push to war. First of all, stop voting for people who believe in making war. And I'll talk in the second panel, I'll make the case for why we should not be afraid to do that. But I think we need to make a connection between the international and the domestic. One of the organizations I'm involved with is the Black Alliance for Peace, which was formed about 1.5 years ago. We currently have a campaign to get the U.S. out of Africa, to stop the U.S. Africa Command. Thank you very much. So go on the website, sign the petition. And we make connections between the international and the domestic. We heard about the militarization of the police. It's 1033 program, yes, that allows surplus defense equipment to be used by police forces across the country. Cops being trained in Israel, and among other things. We want to get the United States out of Africa, and we are putting pressure on the Congressional Black Caucus, who do not do their job in so many different ways, because they're bought off like the other Democrats, of representing their constituents. And we're asking them, we're demanding that they take the lead in ending AFRICOM and getting the United States out of Africa, getting rid of that portion of our military budget, and giving people in those countries real freedom and true democracy, which they cannot have if their militaries are controlled by the United States. So our goal is to get 10,000 signatures by New Year's Day. And if you all do that, that will help us all out immensely. I also want to talk, before I finish, I want to talk about Syria very briefly. This is Obama's war. Libya was Obama's war. People are enslaved in Libya now because of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Syria was destroyed by Barack Obama, and beginning with Hillary Clinton and then John Kerry. Ukraine is run by open card-carrying, straight-up Nazis because of the United States. And it's difficult to decipher when the corporate media will tell you lies about any number of things. And there's a split in the left on Syria, but I just want to say, I believe that true leftists are opposed to interventions. We may have a variety of opinions about other countries. When it comes to whether the United States has a right to be involved, I would say it is not our business. And I think anybody on the left has to oppose intervention in Syria. In the case of Syria, the Mouthpiece Organization are the White Helmets. They are an Al-Qaeda affiliate. They are phony. You can look this up. All their videos of rescuing children, they put kids in the rubble and then pluck them out for the cameras to act as if they're rescuing children. The BBC participated in some of these phony videos. So we have to also be very, very careful. I think you're probably correct to surmise, anyone held up by the corporate media, anyone held up by the ruling elites is someone you should suspect. And I think if you follow that line, and if you stop supporting people who want war, that you will be accomplishing quite a lot. Thank you very much.